Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is The Lollipop and today we are taking a look at yet another big bicycle brand, and that is GT. A lot of people have been requesting that I make comparison videos on different GT bikes, so I'm going to start off my GT comparisons with this 2021 Aggressor lineup. It took a while for me to get started on this brand because their website is a bit confusing to understand for me personally, since some of their prices seem incorrect and they don't have a lot of their bikes on the US website. Nonetheless, I will try my best to cover all of them and explain if there is any information that I am unclear about. There are only 3 bikes in this range this year, so I'll be covering every single component that differs among these bikes, like the brakes, suspension forks, and the cassettes, to hopefully make it easier for you to decide which bike fits your riding style. And throughout the video, I will be filling out this table that shows all the differences in one place, and I'll show the completed table at the end and talk about my opinion on this lineup. Now, if you are interested in comparison videos on different bikes, definitely check out my channel since I have done a lot of them now on different brands like Trek, Giant, and Specialized. And if you have been following my channel, these GT Aggressor bikes are very comparable to the Trek Marlin bikes, Giant Talon bikes, and Specialized Rockhopper bikes, since they are basically intended to be GT's entry-level bikes for mountain biking or rugged commuting. So for a quick background on this lineup, there are 3 bikes: the Aggressor Sport, Aggressor Comp, and Aggressor Expert. As mentioned, these bikes lean more toward the entry-level side of mountain biking since they're less expensive and have lower-end components. There are some other GT bikes that are even less expensive, like the Palomar range, but those are fairly basic and I can cover them in another video if people are interested. Essentially, these Aggressor bikes are intended to be either more budget-friendly options for people looking to get into mountain biking, or just good all-around commuter bikes for people who want something a bit more durable and rugged than a hybrid bike. All the Aggressor bikes are available in sizes extra small to extra large, and most of them are offered in either a 29-inch wheel size or a 27.5-inch wheel size, except the extra small frame, which is only a 27.5-inch wheel diameter bike, and the extra large frame, which is only a 29-inch diameter. This allows you to pick the bike that best suits your riding style and which one is more comfortable for you, as the 29-inch wheel sizes will be a bit faster while the 27.5-inch wheel sizes will be slightly more playful and easier to maneuver, but will also be a tad slower. And with that introduction out of the way, I'm going to first talk about all the components that the Aggressor bikes share with one another, so we have a baseline to work off of when I discuss the differences. The parts that are the same among all the bikes are the Aggressor frame, the cartridge bottom bracket, the pedals, the rear derailleur, the rims and tires, most of the hubs with the exception of the rear hub on the Expert model, which is different but pretty similar, the seat post, the seat, the stem, the handlebars, and the grips. As you can see, there are a lot of shared components among these bikes, so I won't be covering all of them in this video, especially since you'll get these ones regardless of which Aggressor model you choose. I will quickly mention that the rims and tires are WTB branded, and the tires are 2.25 inches wide, which falls in the realm of cross-country as well. Additionally, all bikes use the same Shimano Tourney rear derailleur, which is very entry-level. I'll also show a picture of all the frame geometry specifications right now for both wheel size versions, but these bikes fall into more of the cross-country mountain bike range for these measurements, though compared to some rivals like the Trek Marlin and Giant Talon, it is the closest to a trail bike, which means it should be better for downhill riding than those bikes, but still not too bad for uphill and pedaling efficiency. Now I'm going to highlight the differences. So the components that change on these bikes when you go up the range are the price, suspension fork, brakes, parts of the drivetrain like the shifters, front derailleur, crankset, and the cassette. Starting with the price, this one is pretty confusing because the prices on GT's official US website seem to be incorrect, but according to GT, the Aggressor Sport costs $575, while the Aggressor Comp is priced at $625, and the Aggressor Expert model is $725. Now, the reason why I'm skeptical of these prices is because on a few other websites the prices are much lower, which does make more sense considering the parts on these bikes are much lower level and much less expensive than what their prices can justify. On some other websites, I was able to find some other prices, which were $475 for the base model, $550 for the comp, and $630 for the Aggressor Expert, which would make more sense. But regardless, I'm still going to go over the component differences, starting with the suspension forks. All the bikes use coil spring forks, but the GT Aggressor Sport uses the SR Suntour M3030, which has 25mm stanchions and 75mm of travel, while the Aggressor Comp upgrades to the SR Suntour XCT with wider 28mm stanchions and a little more travel at 80mm. Lastly, the Expert model goes to the SR Suntour XCM with even wider 30mm stanchions, but still the same amount of travel at 80mm. This fork also has a suspension lockout feature, so you can manually lock the fork to make it rigid, which allows you to go faster in flat areas or uphill. Overall, the amount of suspension travel in these forks is closer to that of a hybrid bike than a mountain bike, and these are all pretty entry-level forks that should not be used on very rough terrain too often. However, for commuting and light trails, the Aggressor Sport should be fine, while the others are able to handle some intermediate trails as well. Next, we have the brakes. All bikes use disc brakes with 160mm diameter brake rotors in the front and the rear. The Aggressor Sport uses generic unbranded mechanical disc brakes, while the Comp uses Tektro branded mechanical disc brakes, and the Expert uses Tektro branded hydraulic disc brakes. I can't say much about the unbranded brakes since GT does not list where they are from, but the Tektro brakes should be perfectly fine for most of the uses of these bikes, as they are seen on a lot of bikes around this price point. The hydraulic brakes, however, will perform a lot better than the mechanical disc brakes since they have better stopping power, work better in all weather conditions, and require less maintenance after being initially set up. And besides those two components, the only differences we see between the three bikes are in the drivetrain. I'm going to start off this section by talking about the shifters. The Sport model uses Shimano Tourney 3 and 7-speed shifters for the bike's 3x7 drivetrain, which gives it 21 different speeds. The Aggressor Comp also uses a 3x7 drivetrain, but it uses the Shimano Easy Fire shifters instead, which have some more ergonomic construction. The Expert upgrades to the Shimano M315 shifters for its 3x8 drivetrain, and these have Shimano's Rapid Fire Plus shifting, which allows you to downshift up to 3 gears at once when going to an easier gear for pedaling. For the front derailleurs, both the Aggressor Sport and Comp bikes use the Shimano Tourney entry-level front derailleur, while the Expert goes to the Shimano TY700 derailleur, but all of these are still Shimano Tourney level derailleurs, so they're all entry-level, but they do work fine. Now we're going to talk about the gears. So for the crankset in the front, all the bikes use a 3 chainring crankset with 24 teeth on the smallest ring, 34 teeth on the middle ring, and 42 teeth on the largest ring, which gives a good range when paired with the rear cassette. The Sport and Comp models use the exact same crankset from ProWheel, while the Expert uses a Shimano Tourney branded crankset, which is a bit more reliable and has better construction. And lastly, for the rear cog sets, the Sport and Comp once again use the same part, which in this case is a Sunrace branded 14 to 34 tooth 7-speed freewheel, while the Aggressor Expert upgrades to a 12 to 32 tooth 8-speed cassette, which will have a harder gear for pedaling faster, and cassettes are generally known to be found on more expensive bikes since they are faster and allow you to have a wider gear range, which can just give you better increments of gears to make pedaling easier. But those are all the differences between the three bikes in the GT Aggressor lineup. Here's the completed table, and as you can see, there aren't a crazy amount of changes as you move up the range, but these bikes are mainly intended to be rugged commuter bikes or entry-level mountain bikes, but this lineup in general surprises me a bit because as you move up the range, the part spec doesn't seem to get too much better, and seeing a 3x drivetrain and a Shimano Tourney entry-level derailleur on a $725 bike is pretty insane. However, like I mentioned, the prices may be a bit off there, but even at $630, that is not the best in my opinion. Personally, if you're going to spend that much money on a bike, you're probably better off going towards the GT Avalanche lineup, which I'll do a comparison of soon. However, I still did want to make this video to cover the Aggressor lineup, so I hope it was easy to understand for all of you watching, and as always, I appreciate your support, so thank you so much, and remember to keep biking.